Hey,
All
how
right.
about we talk about Back to the Future?
Let's get into it.
All right, Back to the Future by Bobby Zemeckis and the Bobby Gale.
Oh, by the way, real quick, last week I forgot the superhero mention in Scream 4,
Oh yeah.
Rogue, Anna Paquin, Rogue.
Oh yeah, she popped up in there.
I didn't want to forget that because we could be lax about that. I don't want to be because I got a superhero count in Back to the Future, believe it or not. So
Who? Oh, I'm excited about that.
you
'Cause
should be
I don't
because
know who it could be.
it didn't occur to me until after the movie was over.
Christopher Lloyd as Professor Plum.
All right, man, let's do it.
All right, this flick was released in it was July 3rd, 1985. So it's a July movie. They knew what they had.
Yeah.
This was going to be a hit. Zemeckis coming off of Romancing the Stone.
Right.
Doesn't Spielberg have a producer credit on this movie?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big deal. Like, that was huge in the 80s. If Spielberg had a producer credit, the studio was promoting the fuck out of it.
And this was a thing too that he had produced Zemeckis's first couple of films. And
Yeah,
they were big flops.
I want to hold your hand and Used Cars. Neither of which I've seen, actually.
Me neither.
But by all accounts, pretty good movies, but flopped at the time.
Right.
This comes in at a budget of $19 million, unbelievably. Box office, $389 million.
Yeah.
God damn, this was a phenomenon.
Yeah.
And that is the highest grossing film of 1985. I think this is the first film we've covered where it's number one for its year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, I'm sure that Die Hard didn't. I mean, I'm sure it was in there, but not number one.
No, it was close.
Yeah.
I remember it was like number 3 or 4 or something.
Yeah,
But,
number one.
Number
Yeah.
one for 1985, which is kind of cool because it really reps 1985.
Oh yeah.
But, like, you know, it's a 4-quadrant hit. You can see how this movie's appealing to everybody. Like, we went into this franchise saying, hey, we should do a comedy.
Right.
And then I'm watching this movie, and it's like, it is a comedy.
It's hilarious.
It's very funny, but it's also in action. There's a lot of action in this movie.
A lot of
and
action. It's sci-fi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so obviously a hit. You
Right.
know?
Yeah. It's perfect. Yeah.
It's close to perfect.
Really? You have? Oh, I'm interested in that.
So
Do we need to set up the plot at all? Is that even necessary?
we might as well. It's Marty McFly. He's friends with a scientist for no reason.
Right.
Why can I? Why is Marty McFly friends with Doc Brown?
I knew you were going to ask that. Yeah. I don't know. I guess he's one of them high school outsider kids who befriended the crazy mad scientist down the block.
That is not a thing.
Yeah.
You say that like it's a trope we all know.
No, I don't. Well, that's kind of how I tongue in cheek.
Yeah, I know, but
yeah,
it's.
I don't know. They're in California. Hey, I don't know what goes on out there.
I don't understand it.
Well, I watched a mediocre documentary on this called Back in Time.
Oh yeah, that's on my DVD. I watched it years and years ago.
Yeah, it's not that good. The first half hour is great, and then it just gets into like Back to the Future fan clubs and Back to the Future bands and people trying to recreate the DeLorean for 25 minutes, and that's too much of that. But yeah, and it doesn't offer much insight into it. But yeah, that's a key question.
Honestly, that's my biggest problem with this movie.
Oh yeah, but it's just,
I know, it's nothing.
cares?
It doesn't affect my enjoyment of it. I love Back to the Future. Let's get this out of the way. It's a 5-star movie.
right.
But
Okay, good.
but it is weird. I would appreciate maybe one line of dialogue.
Yeah, they actually could have probably done it with one line of dialogue.
Yeah.
There may have been a line of dialogue, and then got excised. I don't know.
They could have mentioned, like, what would have been enough for me? Marty McFly was doing household shit for him as, like, an after-school job.
There you go.
And they became so tight that Doc Brown's no longer paying him.
There you go. I think you just answered it. That's our explanation.
Yeah, but tell me that.
Yeah.
All right, so Back to the Future. Hey, it was big, a big hit, also big critical hit.
Yes.
Some Oscar nominations here.
Yeah.
4 Oscar nominations. It won for sound effects editing.
Yes.
Presumably for that moment where the license plate "out of time" spins on the gravel.
For all the sound effects in the movie, that was the hardest to get.
Yeah, but it was also nominated for sound mixing. Huey Lewis for song.
I love that song.
I do too.
I love that song.
Me too. I used to own a vinyl of Sports.
I don't know what that means.
That was their biggest album.
Oh, is that the name of it?
Yeah, Sports.
Huey Lewis is one of those guys, one of those bands where I like quite a few of their songs. Couldn't name you a single album.
Well, I promise you, every one of the songs you like, except for "The Power of Love,"
Is on that album.
is on Sports.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Hip to be square.
"I Want a New Drug."
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big album for them, and I love that album. And it was also nominated for screenplay, which I think is insanely deserving.
Absolutely.
I think of the movies we've covered on this podcast, and you know I'm a whore for that Scream screenplay.
Right.
And Die Hard is an almost perfect movie. This screenplay is so tight and perfect.
I think you are right.
It's
I think I agree.
It's like it was created out of the fucking ether. Like, I can't even imagine 2 mortal men sitting down and writing Back to the Future.
Yeah, you're right. That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially 2 mortal men that kind of never made a great movie again for the rest of their careers.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll get into the sequels next week. But
Do you want to just real quick get into your opinion of Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, though?
sure.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have anything to say about Bob Gale.
Well, Bob Gale, I will say that he writes comic books now.
Oh,
And he's written some very fine Spider-Man comics. So I like Bob Gale. He's a interesting guy. But yeah, Back to the Future was his masterpiece.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I inevitably looked up Zemeckis' movies just to see, like, you know, what I had seen and what I had liked. And I made a note of 6 movies. He's directed about 13 or 14 movies.
A lot of them are good, and I'm pretty sure I've
Exactly.
seen all of them. But,
Yeah, I was pretty close on that too. But of the ones he's directed, I think you might be surprised at the 6 I like. Back to the Future, for the record, is the only one I love.
Yeah, same here.
I very much like Castaway.
Me too. I think that's a very good movie.
And then these 4 movies I like. Like they're not great movies. They're not. I don't love them, but I think they're
Can I
good.
guess?
Sure. I don't think one of them will really surprise you. I think, but go ahead.
I'm gonna say What Lies Beneath is on that list.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a pretty good movie. There's 4 of them, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, I have to think about his movies. Forrest Gump?
No.
Well, that's a weird one because
I liked it when I was younger.
That's like his biggest hit in terms of critics after Back to the Future, but
Right.
it's not remembered that fondly today from most critics.
Well, I liked it when it came out,
Me too. I loved that movie.
but then I saw it again, a couple times, and I just can't. It's just
Yeah, me too. It has things about it I still like. I kind of like the tone of it,
Mhm.
but it's a mess. But it won Best Picture.
Yeah.
It's his only Best Picture winner. Okay, what are the others?
Contact.
Oh, which after Back to the Future is my favorite Robert Zemeckis film.
Okay.
Yeah, I love Contact. I
right.
wish there was a sequel so we could talk about it more on this podcast.
I remember, and it's been about a decade or more, but I do remember very much liking The Polar Express.
No, that's terrible. You
Okay.
need to watch that again.
All right, it's been a while.
Been
I
a
thought
while.
that would surprise you anyway because it's animated, and I'm not real big on animated stuff. But I
He
remember
did those 3 animated movies. He
Yeah,
kind
I-
of took a decade off of making live action. I almost said legitimate films, but that's
Right.
condescending. But he did The Polar Express. He did Beowulf,
Yeah.
which I saw because it has a writing credit by Neil Gaiman.
I didn't see it, so
It's pretty bad.
it looked awful.
Yeah, and then he did A Christmas Carol with Jim
Yeah.
Carrey in all the roles.
And I was never a fan of Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh, that's a good movie.
I never liked it. And then anyway, my sixth one is probably what you would consider the worst, or one of the worst, but I like it. Flight.
I don't dislike Flight. Why would you think I dislike Flight?
I don't know. It was, it's because it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, but I don't care. I'm a big Denzel Washington fan. He's one of my
Right.
favorite actors of all time. So to me, Flight was coming off of like 10 years where Denzel Washington was just making old man action movies.
Right, that's true.
And then all of a sudden, like, I loved Flight because it's like, here's this movie that's letting Denzel Washington act again.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so...
All right, so those are mine. So what are yours, Zemeckis'?
no, I think you pretty much hit him. I love Contact. That's my favorite by a lot of his Back to the Futures. And I also have a soft spot, and this is kind of weird, because I always think of Forrest Gump as being the next movie he made after Back to the Future Part 3. But I have a little bit of a soft spot for an oddity that he did in between those two movies, Death Becomes Her.
Oh, I hate that. Oof.
It's a bad movie.
I
but
saw that in the theater.
I did too, and I was young. I didn't get it at the time.
Right.
I thought I didn't know what to make of it. I was going to see it because it was like the ads were like a Bruce Willis movie from the director of Back to the Future, and I was like, all right. But
what were you? What were you, like 6 when that came out?
I think I was like, something like that, 7
Wow.
maybe. Yeah. Yeah, but I saw that in theaters, and I didn't know what to make of it, but now I appreciate just sort of how weird it is. It's one of those movies that it's not good,
Yeah.
but I can appreciate how weird it is. It's sort of like to Robert Zemeckis what Mars Attacks is to Tim Burton.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So Back to the Future, it should be said, I was not born when this movie was made. I was born the following year, and my parents did a very poor job of introducing movies to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's why a lot of the I didn't see E.T. till I was like 17 or something.
Nothing wrong with that.
Just because, but I mean, like, that's a movie. Like, I feel like if you're a parent, you show your kid.
Right.
But I just saw it because it was like, I love Steven Spielberg. What else has this auteur made?
Right.
So Back to the Future was just one, like, I was at a Blockbuster one day. I must have been like 8 or 9 or something, and my parents would let me rent movies, and I think I rented it because I loved Clue. I'd seen Clue a number of times.
Okay.
And that's one of my favorite movies of all time still.
Mm-hmm.
And Lloyd, I was like, what else has that guy done?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. What a weird way to come to this movie.
Yeah, and I think I liked Michael J. Fox from a thing or two also.
Sure. Well, I used to watch Family Ties.
See, I came at a weird time where, like, that was over.
Yeah.
And I then watched Spin City, but that was a little later.
Yeah.
And so Michael J. Fox, I got into him at the time where he was trying to make a go of it as a movie star.
Yeah, Doc
So-
Hollywood and
Yeah, I think the first thing I ever saw Michael J. Fox in was Greedy.
oh boy. Yeah.
And I loved Michael J. Fox.
Right, sure.
I mean, and there's something to be said for that. Like, even in a piece of shit, Michael J. Fox pops.
I agree.
He is so likable. He has such great comic timing.
I agree.
And he's a movie star in these Back to the Future movies, as far as I'm concerned. He's perfect.
I remember liking him in a movie I saw in the theater when I was a young teenager called with James Woods called The Hard Way.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. I've never
And I
seen it.
remember really loving that. I don't think I've seen it in 20 years or more. Easily 20 years or more, but I remember liking it a lot. Yeah.
So
It's great.
we should note that Back to the Future originally starred the second most unlucky person in the history of Hollywood. And I have a top 3. Eric's...
I don't think that's true, though. He has had a totally fine career.
No, that's why he's second most.
He's not C. Thomas Howell or something. I mean, you know.
No. Eric Stoltz was cast as Marty McFly. They filmed with him for a month.
Yeah, there's photos of it and footage. And
Yes. And supposedly he didn't get that it's a comedy.
Mhm.
He was delivering kind of a heavy-hearted Marty McFly.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not what Zemeckis wanted.
Right,
And that's not what and Stoltz did not want to be in a comedy.
right.
And so Eric Stoltz has had a fine career as a character actor and a television director. He's done a lot of great work on TV, working a lot for Ryan Murphy as a director.
I love Eric Stoltz. I love him in Pulp Fiction. I love him in The Water Dance.
I love him in Mr. Jealousy. I
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I love him in the Battlestar Galactica prequel Caprica.
I didn't.
He's
see that.
fantastic in that show. Yeah, so I mean, I'm not trying to denigrate Eric Stoltz or anything, but it's rare. I mean, Michael J. Fox is just so perfect that it's odd they filmed for so long with another actor.
Yeah.
You know who the other two most unlucky men in the history of Hollywood are?
I could probably take some guesses, but I don't know who.
Number 3 is Tom Selleck.
Oh, for not getting Indiana Jones.
He was supposed to be Indiana Jones, but he had to do season 6 of Magnum P.I. instead. And number 1, the great Dougray Scott.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, because he was going to be Wolverine, right?
He was cast as Wolverine in the first X-Men movie, and then filming ran long on his role as the villain in Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, poor bastard.
The worst Mission Impossible, which we will cover. I'd really like to cover those.
I'm down. I've only seen those first 3, so
I've seen all of them.
Yeah, I know you have.
And plus, the first one was directed by Brian De Palma, so that's a good conversation right there.
They all are. Like, the directors of those movies really open up conversation. Brian De Palma, John Woo, J.J. Abrams, Brad Bird, and Christopher McQuarrie. Like, actually,
yeah, you're right.
I have a lot to say about all 5 of those people.
That's a great point. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, okay.
Okay, Back to the Future. I will say the screenplay did not win the Oscar. It interesting nominations that year, though. It was beaten by Witness.
I'm looking at that right now.
Which is a movie I enjoy, but it's not as good as screenplay. That movie works because the action choreography is fantastic and Harrison Ford is great.
Yeah, and look at that category, though. The other things up were
Brazil.
Yeah.
Would be a deserving winner, as well as one of my favorite Woody Allen movies, The Purple Rose of Cairo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a movie I've never heard of called The Official Story.
I know. I saw that, too. I didn't even write it down.
What the hell is that?
Let's say it's a newspaper drama.
There you go. Yeah. All right.
Okay. I will also say, not only I found out doing the research for this, not only was Eric Stoltz originally cast as Marty, Doc Brown originally offered to John Lithgow.
Yep.
Who would have been good.
Yeah.
There would have been basically no difference.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have worked.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite as madcap.
And not as human. That's the thing about John Lithgow.
Right.
I love John Lithgow, but Christopher Lloyd brings an element to Doc Brown that's a little bit sad.
Yeah.
Like, he almost imbues, like, a humanity to that character. Like, I've always thought Doc Brown at some point probably had a long-term relationship go south.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Sure, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
There's a sadness to that character that I don't know if John Lithgow would have been able to pull off. 4 years away from Harry and the Hendersons. Yeah. Okay. So, what do you want to talk about with Back to the Future? It's kind of a tough movie to discuss because, I mean, everyone's seen it. Look, with the plot. Hey, Marty McFly, he's friends with a scientist for no reason. He goes back in time. The scientist has built a time machine out of a DeLorean. He goes back in time to 1955. He meets his parents, and he fucks up their relationship, and he has to get them back together so he still exists.
That is a perfect plot summary.
Yeah.
Expletives included. I like that.
I didn't even realize I cursed.
No, it's perfect for how For you people out there who are, 18 or whatever, who are listening, I love that we throw around the word DeLorean.
Well,
Nobody knows what that is.
people do just from Back to the Future, I think.
That's right,
Yeah.
but it was a car. It was a car back in the day. I remember it. People talked about it not with the same reverence as, well, no, yes, with the same reverence, but not the same frequency of like a Lamborghini and a Ferrari. But we say DeLorean now, and most people are like, what? DeLorean, is that a mode of music?
Yeah.
You know.
Do you know if DeLorean was in the original script, or is that like product placement?
No, it was. I believe it. I think it was in that little docu I watched. I think Zemeckis picked it specifically because of the winged door openings. Now, it wasn't the only car that had that, but I'm pretty sure that's it was tied in there somehow. There was like an easy thing to get like the rights to and to use it, and it was an awesome looking car. So
That's smart. Yeah, it makes it look extra futuristic to the family in that very funny farm scene.
Right,
On.
and I think if they would have picked a car that was more popular, like a Ferrari or Lamborghini, you would kind of be distracted a little bit by it. And like DeLorean, it just looks like a time machine that they wanted in the movie. So it's perfect. It's a great choice.
I agree.
I like the, what I noticed for the first time? I didn't remember the last time I saw this movie and actually sat down and watched it from beginning to end, but the Libyan terrorists in the beginning. Interesting.
Yeah, I had a note here that the villains in Back to the Future are Libyan terrorists and a teenager named Biff. I think it's probably the only movie you could say that about.
That probably, yeah. Well, this was the age of Gaddafi and...
yeah, interesting. They went with Middle Eastern terrorists. And we've seen Eastern European terrorists in the Die Hard franchise.
Right.
We've talked a little bit about white terrorist movies when we were discussing Arlington Road.
Right.
And this is straight up Middle Eastern terrorists.
Yeah. I think it's just also, it's a straight up, it's before obviously it's 16 years before 9/11, and it's where, like, I don't know if Hollywood knew what to do with, Arab or, Persian terrorists, because it was like, they didn't care about being careful about it, but at the same time, they weren't completely, like, viewed as the enemy at that point, because we were not, I don't want to get into politics here, but but in the 80s, it's important to remember that Russia was still the big bad guy.
Yeah, and if you watch 80s movies, every terrorist is Russian.
Exactly.
And so it's an interesting choice to go Middle East in 1985.
It is.
I think it works as a mode to get Marty into the past. But if we spent any more time with these terrorists than we do in this movie, things could have gone horribly wrong.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, you're right.
All they have to be is terrorists. They're caricatures. It's an 80s comedy. I think it was smart to put them in a VW Bug.
Yeah, that was so bizarre.
No,
yeah.
I think it works, though, because it sort of defangs them
as
threats. I feel like if they're treated as a credible threat, then the whole movie we're thinking about, holy shit, what happens when he goes back to the present day?
Yeah,
he's targeted by Libyan terrorists.
It's true.
But you put him in a VW Bug, and it sort of makes them a cartoon.
You're right. Yeah, they are. They're very cartoony. I love the when he pulls the rocket launcher out of the VW.
Yeah, which is another thing. It's sort of like in a cartoon when someone like reaches into their pocket, and pulls out like a fucking missile launcher or something.
Right. Yeah. But that would have been tough as an Arab American to watch that movie even back then and be like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Here we go again. But that's another discussion.
What else do you got? My notes on this movie are so random.
Mine are too. I did make a note that I got lots to say about the movie. I mean, we're not going to.
So talk.
Yeah,
what do you want to say?
I like that the movie in the world of time travel movies for me, this one, like, unlike some of the X-Men movies where I'm just completely lost and stop trying to define logic, and I love them, but this movie, the time traveling as much as it can, it actually makes sense. Like, they keep it simple.
It's very simple. Once we get to that second one,
Right.
it gets a little complicated.
But this is very straightforward.
And that's what I say about the screenplay. It's such an
Right.
elegant, perfect screenplay
Yeah.
that even the time travel doesn't come across convoluted.
Yeah, they go back 30 years. He messes up one thing, but the one thing he messes up determines his own future. So that's it. It's not like, governments are not going to fall. It's
Yeah,
not
no, it's a very personal story.
Right.
And that's why I think Robert Zemeckis is really in his wheelhouse here, because he's a good actor-director. Like, if you look at something like Jodie Foster's performance in Contact or Tom Hanks in Castaway, and Denzel, like, he's good with performances, but he's not a director that makes small movies.
No.
And so you'll notice I didn't reference Joseph Gordon-Levitt's French accent in The Walk.
That's a good move.
Yeah. Fuck that guy. But he has this way of making these Back to the Future movies very grand in scope while never losing sight of the fact that it's a character-based film.
Yeah, Castaway's a perfect example of that. I mean, it's still just it's an intimate movie, despite being
It feels huge.
exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and Back to the Future is a perfect example of that. It really is. Like, if Back to the Future was made today, the stakes really would be, like, global.
Yeah,
But
and I don't need that.
No, you don't. His parents need to get together, so he's born.
Right.
That's it. That's great.
Yeah. I like I liked something I never noticed before, because why would you? But I noticed at the end of the movie when he's doing that. I must say, as many times as I've seen the movie, this is an amazing effect this movie has on me. It is still completely pulse pounding. That last
Fresh.
Yeah, when he has to get back in the car and drive down the street and the lightning is striking, and it's like I know it's going to happen. I know it's going to
I don't feel that way.
Oh, it doesn't
Yeah,
feel...
when I rewatch the movie now, I'm like, let's go.
I didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
But when he's leaving the movie theater, behind him is playing Atomic Man, the Atomic Man.
Yes.
And then when he gets out in the same street, in 1985, it is now a church, and it's called Assembly of Christ.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Very interesting, because what I know, I made a note that when he leaves 1955, there's a science fiction movie playing in the background, and when he gets to 1985, there's a science fiction thing happening in the background too.
Ooh. I want to bring up the cast a little bit.
Yeah. Also, did you notice, by the way, real quick, did you notice in 1985 how there's just nonchalantly panning by the XXX Theater behind his head?
Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff going on in the 85 stuff. I always am very distracted by the aerobics class happening in the background of that one scene.
Okay, go ahead. The cast. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I just want to give special mention. We talked about how great Michael J. Fox is, and he's so great. Listen, he just got nominated for another Emmy the other day.
Did he?
For
what?
Guest acting in The Good Wife.
Oh.
And he's so great, and Christopher Lloyd is perfect. And I will say, I think my favorite actor of all time
Here we go.
is 80s Crispin Glover.
Yeah.
I could not love him more. I think there are no two better performances than Crispin Glover in Back to the Future and River's Edge. No two better performances in the history of cinema.
Wow. All right. Not aiming for the fences there.
I am aiming for the fences.
He is my MVP.
Mine too.
Yeah.
He is so likable and so delightful and
Oh,
funny
he is
and
so fucking
weird
funny.
and off the wall. And the best moment in this entire movie
Oh.
is when he gains some confidence in the diner and he says, "Get me a milk chocolate." Oh,
Oh, it's so good.
I love him so much. And then
He's so great.
And then 1 year later, he's in River's Edge playing a sociopath who's trying to help his friend cover up the murder of a random girl. Like,
Yeah, I got to see that again. I haven't seen that in a long, long time.
that's one of my all-time favorite movies. And he's just so perfect and off the wall and ridiculous in that movie. And in this too, he's but there's a humanity to it. And that's the thing that works about Back to the Future with almost every element of it. It's ridiculous, but there's a humanity to it.
And also, isn't it interesting too how for most movies, and I got to say it, probably most movies, even up to this day with all the technology we have, how the makeup in the movie like works?
You know, I watched this movie in HD for the first time.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. On Netflix.
Yeah, me too.
And I don't think I ever realized that Christopher Lloyd in 1985 is wearing old man makeup.
Oh, really?
I don't think I ever realized that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, the makeup is good.
Yeah, and it's like for Leah Thompson.
It's not great for Leah Thompson. It's better for Glover.
But it's a weird balance between being subtle and unsubtle, but it still works. You know, like it's done well. I think that's a tribute to the acting too. They really just inhabit a character from 30 years difference, you know, in age. They're able to do it. But you're so right about Crispin Glover. And how good is Biff too? Thomas Wilson.
Yeah, I love Thomas Wilson. He still does stand up to this day.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's a stand up comic that they plucked out to be in this movie, and he's great. He's every time I see him in something, he's fantastic. He's great as the gym teacher who becomes Bill's stepdad in Freaks and Geeks.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
He's really underused, Thomas F. Wilson. Yeah. And I'm sorry if my mind was wandering before, because you brought up Leah Thompson, and holy shit, is she sexy in this movie?
I agree.
Oh my god!
I had quite a big crush on her.
Me too.
Yeah, she's unbelievable.
She's unbelievable, and
I agree.
and she's very good too. I don't mean to like just talk about her in sex terms.
No,
because
she's
funny in this movie,
She is.
and also very likable. Like you want her to be with George,
right?
Crispin Glover, and I think she's still good too. Like I like her. She's in that show Switched at Birth now, which I dropped after a couple seasons, but I think she still kind of can act. I think she's been underused in her career, and I think part of that is because she was such a little sex pot in the '80s that when she got older, like kind of studios just stopped using her.
Yeah, she did that bad movie with Andrew Dice Clay.
Hey, I'm back. What movie?
I just said that because I wanted to bring him back on the show.
Sure.
You can with Victoria Jackson of SNL.
Hey, I'm on the show too.
Little movie called Casual Sex with a question mark.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, don't you mean Casual Sex?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ford Fairlane is in that movie, my friends.
Sure, but Leah Thompson also very good as the sort of villain in. Is it Pretty in Pink or Some Kind of Wonderful? I got them mixed up.
I'm sorry, I'm still laughing at the Victoria Jackson impression.
No, which one is Leah Thompson? Pretty in Pink or Some Kind of Wonderful?
Some Kind of Wonderful with Eric Stoltz.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
I think she's the one who might have wanted to bring him aboard.
Yeah, and then she ended up marrying the director.
Oh, okay.
Howard Deutsch.
Howie Deutsch.
Yeah, Howie Deutsch.
Hey,
I'm here, Howie Deutsch. How are you doing, Andrew? Hickory dickory dock. What's up, Victoria? Hey! All right.
I could do that the whole show.
I hope we don't.
I'd
Okay,
love to.
back to the future.
Back to BTTF, as fanboys call it. Something else I thought that I never noticed. Now, I noticed two points. One, the script is so chock full of amazing lines that would be otherwise complete throwaways, but are so
Very quotable even for me.
yeah. I mean, and still hilarious. Like the quote unquote dated lines are not dated; they're still hilarious. Like when Marty's trying to convince Doc he's from the future, and he tells him, well,
Who's the president?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan.
But you know what? Doc Brown makes an observation. Of course, video cameras are everywhere. You'd need a movie star to be the president. And he's not wrong. That's
Nope.
kind of why Ronald Reagan was the president.
Not only is not wrong, that is exactly why.
Yeah.
Because he says even later in the movie, he goes, "Oh, no wonder your president's an actor. You have to be good in front of the camera."
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, and I love also where he goes, "Who's the first lady?" Jane Wyman, which of course is also hilarious because that was Ronald Reagan's first wife. No Nancy Reagan to be found.
Ooh, I didn't catch that. That's good.
Yeah, and who's the vice president? Jerry Lewis.
Yeah. Yeah, the references are on point, and no more than the music in the 50s. And I will tell you, Back to the Future changed my life musically.
Yeah, you love that music stuff, but yeah.
This is what got me into it, though. Yeah. For those not in the know, like Hank, I went through a very important phase of my life where the music I was listening to was 50s prom music.
Yeah.
And I used to go to flea markets and buy cassette tapes if they had the words 50s or prom in the titles. And I bought a few of them. And my two favorite bands were the Penguins and the Platters.
Wow.
And there's no Platters in this movie, unfortunately. They're a great band. But the Penguins, you do hear their signature hit, Earth Angel, which is top 20 favorite songs of all time for me.
That scene gets me every time. That cue when they kiss and the music rises up and Marty looks at the photo and his hand comes back and he hits the guitar chord.
Yeah, and Alan Silvestri adds some orchestration to the Earth Angel.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Some strings.
What do you think of the score?
Yeah, I have some notes.
I don't know a lot about Alan Silvestri. I know that the Back to the Future score is iconic and great, but I don't know a lot about him.
Well, before I get to him real quick, I wanted to say that I loved, I had a thought, I was going to say this earlier. The scene after that, where they ask Marty to stay on stage and play a number, I love that scene.
They'd never get away with Michael J. Fox not singing today.
No, that's true too. But I was watching the movie and I had a really interesting thought, and then when I was reading about the movie afterwards, I found it so interesting and kind of patted myself on the back. I was watching the movie, and when that scene happens, I was like, "Oh God, I love this scene." And I was like, "But it's interesting. If you take that scene out, you could have still kept going with the movie. Like after Earth Angel, he could have walked off stage, and the movie still would be great. There's nothing." And then I read afterwards that Zemeckis absolutely was going to cut that scene.
Well,
and
I understand why.
Audiences loved it so much he kept it in.
I understand why, because there's a tension to the plot.
Right.
And right after that scene, we're going to the big race against the clock.
Right.
With Christopher Lloyd doing his best Charlie Chaplin impersonation in modern times.
Nice.
Yeah, and it really doesn't add anything except that it's funny. That's all.
Funny.
And
I love it.
and Scott Aukerman has an amazing bit. I was gonna steal it, but I can't. I have to attribute it to the source. Scott Aukerman has a bit where it's like, and then in that scene, Marvin Berry races to the phone, calls his cousin's number, which he knows by heart. And then talks to his cousin, who doesn't seem to know him, and who he has to very clearly state his first and last name for his cousin before telling him that this is his new sound, and then his cousin goes on to write that exact song.
Yes, and also that rock and roll then did originate from white people, not from Chuck Berry.
That is true, and that's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, it is fucked up.
Yeah.
It's such a funny scene, but that has always occurred to me when I watch the scene. It's like, oh, I see. So Chuck, yeah, I get it.
I wish in Back to the Future Part 3 or something, he ended up in like 1978 and all of a sudden starts doing Rapper's Delight.
It all came from Marty McFly. All of it, all the great black music.
He's the greatest musical genius of all time. You know, he wrote that song. Do, 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 do.
They traveled to 1920, and he inspired Robert Johnson at the Crossroads, and they invented the blues together.
He couldn't make it in 85. He was just too darn loud.
Yeah. Huey Lewis, great cameo.
Huey Lewis, great cameo, yeah.
Love it. So Alvin Silvestri, this man has about 1,000 credits, 4 of which are good. 2,
really? That's it?
I really seriously looked, because
if you played the Back to the Future theme to me, without telling me Alan Silvestri wrote it, I might say, oh, that's John Williams.
Yeah. Well, the 2 great scores he wrote are pretty much back to back, and that is Back to the Future and Predator. Predator is a great movie score. I think we covered that. I don't know why we would have, but maybe we didn't. But
I love Predator, but I can't remember the score.
Oh, the score is, no pun intended, instrumental to how great that movie is. It is awesome.
Hey, that's in development too. In my research earlier in the show, Shane Black attached to the next Predator.
That I'm excited about.
Okay.
Predator, Back to the Future. The score to Castaway is good. It's nothing that great.
Oh, he kept working with Zemeckis, huh?
Oh, he worked with Zemeckis on Contact.
Yeah, that's a kind of a good score.
Roger Rabbit. Yeah. The Avengers.
Oh, big one.
Yeah. But all the rest are... Actually, guess what pops up in my research?
What's that?
You're going to love it. He scored Aaron Kruger's Reindeer Games.
Ooh, bringing it all back to the great.
Yeah.
Scream 3 screenwriter.
EHREN, Aaron Kruger.
Yeah. Did he do any of the Transformers? Because that's what he's working on now.
Oh, I don't know. I only wrote down notable big movies like The Abyss and The Bodyguard.
Yeah, those are bigger than the Transformers.
The Bodyguard was like the highest selling soundtrack in the history of movies.
No, I know. The Bodyguard was big.
But not because of that.
No, everyone was buying it for that one Whitney Houston song. It's the same way that fucking Titanic soundtrack went like multi-platinum. And the whole soundtrack is just James Horner. But it's got that one Celine Dion song.
It surprised me about Alan Silvestri, honestly, because I'd seen his name so many times throughout the years in so many movies. And then when I went over his 1,000 of films, I was just like, oh, actually, he's only done a few good scores. He just gets a lot of employment, you know.
Good scores. That's a great sequel as well.
Rob Reiner, a few good scores coming out with the sequel is coming out called LBJ next year.
Is that true?
Yeah, Rob Reiner, LBJ, Woody Harrelson.
Ooh, that could go either way.
Yes, it could.
Okay.
I'm sure Woody will be great.
Yeah, but when was the last good Rob Reiner movie?
A Few Good Men?
Maybe.
Anyway, that's Alan Silvestri. Anything more about the movie, though?
I don't have too much. It's a great movie. It's just, everyone's seen Back to the Future. It's funny, it works, and it works in spite of itself because it could be huge and complicated, and it's small and simple. And it could be broad, but the performances rein it in. And you've got Crispin Glover being weird, but he's also human. You've got Christopher Lloyd being weird, but he's also a real character. Like, there's so many things that could have gone wrong with Back to the Future despite the great script, and everything works.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, even
Not everything works in parts 2 and 3, and we'll get to that next week.
Yeah, that is true. So your MVP is the same as mine, Crispin Glover.
Crispin Glover will be my MVP for any movie we cover where Crispin Glover is in it.
Charlie's
Spoilers for Charlie's Angels. He's my MVP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what?
Are we going to cover his trilogy of films starring Down syndrome kids?
I'm not sure. That's we'll have to discuss.
They are sequels.
We'll have to confer on that. We'll have to call in the board and see what the board meeting says.
Okay.
I tried really hard for Back to the Future to find an LVP. I tried really hard.
I got one.
I couldn't. I think I know, but I'm not gonna.
Who do you think it is?
It's not Goldie the Mayor, is it?
No, I love Goldie the Mayor.
All right, good.
I love Goldie Mayor.
Yeah. Okay,
He's
good.
so good.
Okay, then wait.
Strickland is so great, but I can't do a Back to the Future podcast and not bring up the fact that Strickland is one of the great, sort of crotchety educators in the history of film.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. We didn't even mention that guy. He's great. So who's your LVP?
You're a slacker. Slacker.
Just like your old man.
A lot of people attribute slacker to Richard Linklater. That word was used well before in Back to the Future. No, my LVP, of course, and this will be my LVP in any movie this actor appears in.
Einstein, the dog?
Billy Zane.
Oh, wow. He's one of the thugs?
Yep.
Okay.
And every time he's on screen, I'm just looking at him going like, you suck, Billy Zane.
I didn't even remember that.
Yeah.
Is he what? He's not the one wearing the 3D glasses, right?
No, he's the other one. Speaking of Titanic, yeah, there's like 3 thugs, and one of them is the dude that was originally cast as Biff.
Right.
And then Eric Stoltz was tall, so they needed a taller Biff.
Right.
And they cast Tom Wilson. That guy's a poor bastard, too.
Yeah.
The other one is the 3D glasses guy.
I love that touch, by the way.
That is great, yeah. It's like a fucking Archie comic. It's great.
How great is that scene, too, real quick at the end when the those assholes shout the racist thing at the band, and they all come out of the car?
Oh, that's awesome. And can I also say, I forgot in this movie, Biff tries to rape Lorraine.
Yeah. Really intense.
Like, that is straight up a rape.
It is.
There's
You're right.
a harrowing shot. Like, maybe too much for this movie. Maybe a moment this movie didn't need.
Yeah.
Where Biff is all over Leah Thompson, and Leah Thompson just looks up at George and just says, George, please help me. And like her performance is too good because she's successfully selling the fact that she's being raped.
Yeah, you're right.
That's maybe a little too much.
Yeah, maybe a little editing choice would have been.
Sure, but Billy Zane is the third thug in that.
Okay, so Billy Zane, LVP.
Yeah.
I'll jump on your bandwagon for that, buddy.
Thank you.
Because I didn't have one, and I got nothing against him like you do, but I got nothing for him either. So he's right there.
Got nothing for you.
I got a superhero count.
Yeah. Tell me.
Are you ready?
I am.
Jimmy Olsen.
Oh, yes! Holy shit, that's so good.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's Marty's brother.
Yep,
played
Dave
Jimmy
McFly.
Olsen in those like old, the 70s and 80s Superman movies.
Yep, he's the Jimmy Olsen, Mark McClure.
You fucking nailed that one.
Thanks, buddy.
Let's leave off there. That's perfect.
Yep.
Is that it?
That's it. That's the
Okay.
only one I got.
Yeah, okay. Tune in next week. We're talking Back to the Future Part 2 and Part 3.